guys, and welcome back to Mika Reacts and Reviews, where we react and review to things on the internet. Same day, same shirt, different video. And today we are reacting to Russell Brand, a brand new person on this channel. I have been following Russell Brand for a long time. I knew him, or I didn't know him, but I knew of him back in his really hippie, commune, almost socialist phase. I still think he has some sort of socialist beliefs and ideas, but in a recent 2 years, especially really recently, like right around the big Rona pandemic, Russell Brand has really been speaking out about a lot of things that might even put him on the conservative side of things, but he does still kind of approach them in a very balanced, I love everybody kind of hippie dippy kind of way, but not overdoing it, which I like. I feel like that's growth. I feel like I'm kind of a hippie myself, but I feel like when you enter like hippie world, it's almost like becoming like a born again. You get super into it, and then you start to mature a little bit and kind of balance out your views a little bit more and not be so idealistic, but still, you know, keep a little bit ingrained in you. Anyway, today we're going to be reacting to Russell Brand's Society is Collapsing, Prepare for Off-Grid Living. So I've been hearing a lot of people talk about this lately, especially again with the situation in the last year or so, people really coming to the conclusion that they can't rely on the government, and never probably should have in the first place, and that they want to be more self-sufficient. I already said, like, when the big lockdowns happened, I think the people who had it best off were people who lived off-grid and like lived in their camper and their vans and renovated buses and stuff like that, that were well prepared, who had, you know, solar panels and stock of food, because they can just go and drive to the middle of nowhere, not be around anyone, be completely self-sufficient, and still have space to drive around and change their location without being told that they have to stay in a place or something like that, depending on where they were. And so I think people, with this big mass exodus out of a lot of the bigger blue states and people moving further into the countryside where there's more space and stuff like that, I see it a lot where I stay, and where I stay, a lot of people talk about this self-sufficiency and living off grid and being sustainable. I talked to my mom the other day, who is not a big hippie at all, and she talked about also buying land and becoming self-sufficient, because I think people are just kind of realizing, like, oh shit, like our system is actually quite fragile and we need to be prepared for the next big pandemic or lockdown or whatever happens. And so I thought this video would be interesting to kind of approach. Alright, that's enough of my intro. If you like these type of videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that button to get the notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright, here we go.
Apocalypse now, apocalypse when? Is Armageddon upon us? If you're a doomsday prepper, you're already getting ready for what you regard as the inevitable, the decline, the deterioration of society. In my podcast, Under the Skin, I speak to Bradley Garrett, who explains to me beautifully some of the components of being a doomsday prepper. Survivalists, what are our assumptions about them? Should you be preparing for the breakdown of society? Is it closer than we think, with the all-prevailing pandemic, with the treachery, deceptions, lies, and peculiarity? Should we all be preparing for the end of the world now? In this conversation with Bradley Garrett, we cover a lot of these issues and learn a lot, and actually feel quite optimistic about Armageddon as a result. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to listen to this whole conversation, go over to Luminary and subscribe. You get this podcast, all of the podcasts where once a week I talk to someone deep, and Above the Noise, my meditation podcast.
Alright, before we get to his actual interview, are you a doomsday prepper? Have you been one of those people who made fun and laughed at doomsday preppers? Do you think they're all crazy QAnon people? Or do you think they just were ahead of their time and like really knew what was up before the rest of society did? The rest of the normies. Alright, let's continue.
And the other thing that sort of struck me is when you said about, like, you know, about reality, that sometimes when I was younger and I would think about violence, that somehow like a violent confrontation strips away all of the various edifices that we voluntarily or otherwise live behind. And like if someone says, I'm going to kill you, or punches you in the face, like now you are like, oh fuck yeah, stuff like that can just happen. Like it doesn't matter that I've learned these things, you know. Where is it now?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the doomsday preppers or survivalists that I've been spending years living with have, you know, they explained to me that in some sense they were looking forward to a disaster because it ruptures the illusion. The bunker, you know, whether you think about that as a physical space or a kind of metaphor, is a space for recreation. It's a space of rebirth, essentially, right? I mean, if you don't emerge from the bunker, it's a tomb. So the bunker is a space of rebirth, but it's also a space of control. And because so many aspects of our lives now are not within our control, I think that that's something that people seek. You know, they want to create a space where they know they can control the parameters of their existence. And that moment of being in the bunker, you know, surrounded by the things that you've put together, self-sufficient, cut off from the world, is precisely akin to that moment of violence that you're describing, right? It's a moment of radical confrontation with our existence, you know, that where the veneer has been stripped away and we're back to the basics. And I think, you know, a lot of us crave that on some level also because, you know, society and civilization originally was built upon a premise of mutual understanding, of cooperation, of human connection with the natural world, right? And that now has been occluded by these social, economic, and political structures that are fundamentally unsatisfying on some level. And so what many of the preppers told me was that the disaster is a moment for rebirth, for recreation, for reconnection. And so, I mean, strangely, there is an anxiety there underlying things, but there's also a hopefulness that when the disaster comes, it's a moment for us to confront ourselves and potentially to rebuild the world. And this is a perfect moment to be talking to you because, you know, we're in that moment now. I mean, we have an opportunity to reshape things after going through a global disaster that's killed, almost 4 million people now. We have a moment to build a different kind of world. Whether we're going to rise up to that challenge, I'm not sure. But it's certainly a time of change, and that's exactly what these preppers had been telling me long before the pandemic had hit.
Stopping it there, I totally agree with what this guy is saying. I understand that there's been hundreds and thousands of people millions who've lost their lives, and hundreds of thousands who've suffered horrific consequences because of the pandemic and the lockdowns and the trampling over civil rights or human rights. You know, there's been massive spike in mental health issues, suicide, drug addiction, drug overdoses, child abuse, domestic violence that has also caused injury and death. People have lost their livelihoods, people have lost their life savings, people have lost their business, their homes, their marriages, their friends, their family. It has destroyed people, right? On the other hand, especially in the communities that I'm in, you hear a lot of conversation about people being woken up. Like they needed something to happen to shake up the reality or break them out of the matrix, you know, hippie talk, to again even lift the veil over this idea of security and safety and government safety nets are very secure society, that how fragile the system actually is. And so in that case, maybe in the beginning it's bad, but eventually something good can be birthed out of that, realizing, you know, what you really want in life and how you really want to go about life and how you want to build that life, right? I think it shifted and woke a lot of people up out of their nap, out of their coma, or out of people just zombie walking through life and realizing like, oh, what the fuck am I doing? It can all end tomorrow. Let me get my shit together and let me do the things I want to do and create the life that I want. Also, creating this urgency that we talked about earlier of self-sufficiency and accountability. And I think people are really even more willing or wanting to do that. Yeah, there's some people who are like, holding tight and suckling at the teat of the government and the system and the establishment, and they don't want it to change because that's their safety net and that's their security blanket. But for a lot of people, it is that longing to be like, I just want to feel secure. And I realize now, in order to do that is to be self-sufficient and accountable for myself. Even if that's me just as an individual or in a small community setting, I can do that. And I also think that being self-sufficient and not having everything so automated or quick or easy, or the government assisting you, it builds strength in people. I think one of the reasons why the West is kind of crumbling right now is because people have gotten lazy, weak, and thin-skinned because everything's at their fingertips. You know what I mean? Where I live, everything's not always easy and everything's not always comfortable, and I like it that way. Everything's not on automatic. And when I live in small towns and countries, and I'm in the mountains right now, if something breaks down and breaks, it's up to the community to fix it. And sometimes they fix it with duct tape, but they fix it and they get it done, and they're not always reliant on the government or the city or whatever to come in and fix it. And it's also because there's not as many red tapes and regulations, which can be dangerous, but it also gives people the freedom just to do things on their own and not always have to depend on the government or someone to come in and tell them that they can or they cannot do something. I think it builds strength and tenacity in people, and it builds self-worth and confidence because it gives you something to look forward to do, and you can be self-sufficient, sit back, see what you built, see what you grew, and feel good about that, instead of relying on stupid labels like black, white, women, vagina, whatever, to be your worth. Your worth comes from your dedication and the hard work you put into the creating the life that you want. And I think that comes from you see that in communities that don't have everything at their fingertips, and that's super easy. And again, it cannot always be a good thing. I do believe that some countries deserve a little bit more help from the government, but I also think the countries that have too much government influences are usually the lazy, weak, entitled, spoiled ones who would never survive an apocalypse. All right, that's a long little rant. Let's get back into it.
Cool. Few things there, Bradley. One, like the cave, the bunker, I think of Christ, and like the moment in the cave. That's so cool. That's a moment before rebirth. And I also think of the Kali energy in Hinduism, like the destroyer, that things have to be destroyed that we may be reborn. And of course, most myths have that idea. In agriculture itself requires a kind of death and burial for new crops to grow and stuff. Mate, this idea, are survivalists a homogenous sort of group, or is there a lot of variety? Because when you just said that thing about the 4 million death, this is my assumption about survivalists, and obviously I don't know anything like as much as you do. I only know what I've seen on documentaries and stuff. My assumption would be that survivalists are sort of libertarian, right-wing, anti-state, anti-government, part of the root being kind of like the King of England could come over here at any moment. We best tool up and get ready. And that they would therefore be kind of anti-vaccine, would think that the pandemic has been exaggerated, mobilized, misused, and that its risks have been exaggerated or whatever. Where am I wrong with my assumptions there on the survivalists?
Okay, before we get to Russell Brand's assumptions on survivalists, let me know what your assumptions are on survivalists in the comment section. But also, when he talked about the whole things need to be broken down and destroyed to be rebuilt or rebirthed, I agree with that to some extent. I do think through trauma and through tragedy and through trials and tribulations, you can come out a better person. Not everybody does, but you can come out a better person and maybe strip away your old self, your old ideas, your child self or whatever, and become a better person, a more wiser person. But I think what a lot of people do, and they say take that idea and they kind of corrupted a lot of the communism or the socialists, is the whole burn down the system so we can have a new system. A lot of them is not about tear down the evils of the world so we can thrive and live together. A lot of it is they want to tear down that system, tear down that power so they can then be in power. A lot of that comes from the want to have power yourself. So for people who kind of say that, it comes off like, no, we just want to tear down the system so we can be free. A lot of it's not that. So I agree with Russell Brand to a certain extent, but I think that if you're trying to just like burn down buildings and rip things down and change science and biology so you can have 50 million genders or stuff like that, so you can just destroy the old system and have it new, I don't think that's about freedom. I think that's about control. All right, let's continue.
Well, so there's a few things. One is you're not wrong. Those people do exist. And there's not, it's a bit of a misnomer to describe this as a community of people. There are people from a full political spectrum that are ending up in these communities or adopting these practices. There's some great research that came out of Queens College. Anna Maria Bounds worked with inner city preppers in New York City, many of whom are black, and who said, we grew up in essentially a constant state of emergency, dealing with crisis on a daily basis. And so they're prepping so that they don't have to go through something like that again. Many of the communities that I went to, and now here I'm using community in the sense that, a group of people who have moved into a set of bunkers in a place. We can talk about the bunkers themselves. But many of those people came from drastically different backgrounds, both vocationally and in terms of their demographics, politically across the spectrum. And what was fascinating to me is that they were able to communicate around these shared methodologies, right? So you start with the thought experiment. If this happens, then what would I do, right? And then you start putting the preparations, the material preparations in place, the emotional, psychological preparations in place to be able to deal with those scenarios. So the preppers that I worked with were able to sort of bypass their differences because they were trying to work through these problems, these thought experiments on a cooperative basis, and often that meant building complementary skills so that they could see each other through a disaster. They call these mutual assistance groups. So there's a lot there to unpack, but the community is sort of wider and more diverse than we might expect.
The most interesting thing that he talked about in this bit right here was the fact that there is a mixed ideology, belief system, political belief system, gender and social structure, all that stuff within these type of communities. I'm not that familiar with prepping communities, but I'm pretty sure I understand the stereotype. Most people probably think they're white, middle of the country, backwards, Republican, Trump supporter, crazy QAnon people. I think that's like everyone's sort of stereotype of preppers. Even though like my mom was a prepper and she was definitely not none of those things. But she wasn't a prepper to a large degree, but we definitely prepped. We definitely had emergency food sources, water sources, wind up batteries, all those things, water filters. But anyway, what I have noticed though, when it comes to off the grid living, when it comes to van life, bus life, RV life, sustainable living, people living off the land, planting their own food, even the travel community has become mixed when it comes to ideology and political ideas and stuff like that. I think most people would still maybe consider themselves kind of liberal or whatever, but I have noticed there's a difference because I feel like a lot, especially the sort of downsizing, tiny house, living off the grid. I think for a while the stereotype of that was hippie, like hippies do that, right? But then I think with the shift, and I think Republicans and conservatives have always done that, but I think that was a stereotype. But I think with the shift of the political atmosphere, and again this whole year that passed, and even just the last 4 years, I think that a lot of good old boy, Midwestern boys or families, Republicans, conservatives, has now shifted to that type of lifestyle. Like, again, moving back to the country, living off the land, being more self-sufficient, even going into bus life, van life, RV life, stuff like that. And they sort of mixed with the hippie community, and hippie community has kind of mixed with them. And I was watching some van life. I love watching those those videos on YouTube, van life and stuff like that, because I would love to do it someday. But there was a old hippie woman who was doing van life, and they were asking her what kind of community, what kind of people do you run into, and she was like, shockingly, she was like, I am so shocked. I have Trump supporter friends. Like, she was shocked that there were Trump supporters who were doing the same lifestyle, because in her mind it was just hippies and liberals and stuff like that. But it's like, I've seen a shift even in the travel community that can be very liberal and very progressive. I've seen a shift in people, because it's almost like the ideologies are sort of blending together, because a lot of the traveler community don't want to get the big poke. So if they live in the States or they live in another country and they're thinking about going back to their country, they're moving to more conservative Republican areas, because those areas tend to be more lax and not, they feel less fear of the poke mandatory law coming or something like that. They feel less pressure to mask up and all those things if they go to a more conservative Republican area. And so, because a lot of hippies were anti that for a long time, they're anti that, they're anti-pharma, they're anti-government, and I think now conservatives are becoming very anti-government, the poke and stuff like that. So the ideologies are mixing. If that makes any sense, like their ideologies are starting to blend together, and so when these communities trying to find other communities that are like-minded, they're realizing like their political differences are kind of mixed. It's not just liberals and progressives anymore. It's like liberals, progressives, Trump supporters, moderates, libertarians, all of it's mixing together. Even the idea of talking about Trump in these progressive liberal communities where I travel in, it's not even a big deal anymore, because people are starting to be like, wow, he was kind of right about this and he was kind of right about that. So anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but I do agree with him that these communities are starting to blend together. It's not just this stereotype idea of what a prepper is anymore, just like the hippie, live off the grid, sort of be self-sufficient community isn't all what it looks like either. It's a blend of ideologies and identities and stuff like that. Anyway, I hope that made sense. Let's get back into it.
Meant building complementary skills so that they could see each other through a disaster. They call these mutual assistance groups. So there's a lot there to unpack, but the community is sort of wider and more diverse than you might expect. And I'll tell you now that recent research has indicated that just in the United States alone, almost 13 million people are prepared to go for 30 days without any sort of infrastructure, food, water, power, grocery stores. That's an incredible statistic. I mean, it's almost 1% of the population is prepared to weather 30 days on their own. So that gives you a sense of how many people are involved and how many different sorts of people are involved in the practice.
That's so cool, Bradley. One thing is, like, from the first part of what you're saying, it's like that abstract ideals about, your cultural values around what we once would have regarded as the left and the right are irrelevant if you're involved in the project of building a community that survives the culture that consists of those kind of debates. My view is kind of a distraction from important stuff. And two, like 1% of the population, that's enough to overthrow the government. Like if it was the right 1%, if you can mobilize, protest, civil disobedience, sort of, I guess you'd need some strategy and some cohesion. But like that's a significant number, that's an impactful number. Maybe we should be looking at the apocalypse optimistically. No, I can't do a neologism made out of those two words. The point of it is this, that maybe we should be preparing for a better society. Maybe civilization needs to change. Hit me with your comments below. Subscribe to my channel. If you want to learn more about meditation, go over to Awakening.
Okay. All right, guys, that was Russell Brand's Society is Collapsing. I thought that was really, really interesting. Again, the whole overtaking the government. Depends what group it is, because most people who want to overtake society or the system of the government are usually people who just want power for themselves. But anyway, I do think more and more people really need, if you're not already thinking about, you know, how to be more self-sufficient, it's time to start. It's time to start. You might have to move locations, you might have to change jobs or whatever, but I think people really need to just really take this opportunity to shift their focus if it needs to be shifted. If there's been any tragedy in your life because of the pandemic, I'm so sorry to hear that. At the same time, maybe using that tragedy to help rebuild something different for yourself that would be better. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's it, guys. I know this is a more serious video. I do like to throw these deep talk conversation videos onto my channel because I can't just do the same thing all the time. I'll get bored of my channel, and I like having these conversations. These are the type of videos that I listen to all the time in my spare time. I really very rarely watch junk TV now, and so I would just like to share these conversations with you. So if you appreciate it and you want to see more of these type of videos, or even more videos from Russell Brand, or put in a comment in the comment section below. What do you think about Russell Brand? Some people think he's a grifter. Some people think he took the red pill. Some people think he's just intelligent. He's like paying attention. Or do you think he's just a celebrity that needs to shut up? Also let me know in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Hit that bell to get the notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm. I know I don't always respond to the messages or the comments, but I read every last comment, and I thank you guys so much because it really does help. And if you'd like to support this channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal me link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. It helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle, so if you'd like to want to see where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Hit the link, go subscribe to my travel vlog channel, and or follow me on Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date, and you guys have an amazing day.